Hello, in this video we will learn about the ear physiology and also learn about the problems and infection like deafness. So we will concern in this video about the deafness naturally or unnaturally. So basically what is ear? First of all we should need to understand the ear is the adaptive tool in the ear for terrestrial animals to detect sound waves frequency like human also, but the detect sound waves is limited. For example, the very low frequency and very high frequency is unable to detect through ear. The low frequency will not cause the problem in ear, but the high frequency can cause. So this is the person contain ear. Ear contain external, middle and internal part. Let's begin to understand first the external part. And this external part contain auricle, and the sound can be moved from the external acoustic meatus. And this external acoustic meatus, the our sound lead to damaged tympanum. For example, high frequency sound. While eardrum or tympanic membrane is known as a tympanum, which that when vibrate will move the incus, malleus, and stapes, the bones of the middle ear. And this, when vibrate the bones, will vibrate the cilia are present in the cochlea of the internal ear. And when the cilia will vibrate, will transmit the signal depolarization to the cochlear nerve, and this cochlear nerve will transmit the signal after the depolarization to the brain auditory cortex. So remember, incus and malleus and stapes is the smaller bones throughout the body of the human, even all mammals, and the semicircular canal is used for the balancing of the body, and this is the basically is the external ear infection due to virus, bacteria, fungal disease will lead to cause the dysfunction of the hearing, and the tumor benign and malignant will lead to not cause problem in the early tumor formation will lead to deafness. So the wax build up infection and eardrum damage by our sound will lead to damage the tympanic membrane, and the genetically absent of cochlear nerve or dysfunction and the aneurysm or circulatory problem will lead to cause the dysfunction of the cochlear nerve will not transmit the signal to the brain, will lead to cause the deafness also. That can be unnaturally or unnaturally due to the nerve injury also. Let's begin to understand the cross section of the brain, the section mesencephalum and the section of brainstem. Section of brainstem, let's begin to understand the further process and where is the nuclei are present and what is the pathway of the audition, the auditory pathway. And this is the inferior colliculus is used for the transmit the signal to both sides of the auditory cortex. Even the one side can detect the sound to detect the other side. Ultimately, from the inferior colliculus we will discuss easy to understand, and the cochlear nuclei here, and this is the superior olive nuclei and the reticular formation. Let's begin to understand. From here is the cochlear nerve, which that transmits the signal, and this is the type 1 neuron. Genetically absent if or damaged by injury will not transmit conduction to the brain, and the depolarization will not occur. Genetically can be absent will lead to dysfunction of the hearing is known as a deafness. While here is the transmission of the signal normally through depolarization of the type 1 neuron to the interneuron are present in the section of brainstem, and in this way the basically is the superior olive will transmit the signal to the inferior colliculus, and this inferior colliculus is basically transmit the signal of both sides of the colliculus, left and right, to transmit the signal of the both auditory cortex to Here is if the damage right side to half sound in one ear will lead to cause the problem, while the nerve damage one ear only will lead to cause the problem in one side, not both side. So that is why if the left will problem, it means the right can be loss of hearing. So the tumor and the injury can cause deafness in the auditory cortex. If the one side, so it means the one side can hear but the one side is absent. So the type of ear disease, let's begin to understand. It can be conductive hearing loss, CHL. Conductive hearing loss means the conduction will be impossible. It can be natural or unnatural. Will lead to cause deafness. Sensory neural hearing loss. In this way, the sensory nerves will lead to damage due to the injury or some other process. Mixed hearing loss and other is the central hearing loss and the functional hearing loss and malingering. Let's begin to understand the tinnitus in ear. It is also known as the ringing in the ear. It is the internal, not external, because the internal problem, the physiological changes due to the age-related hearing loss, injury, injury of the carotid artery, circulatory system problem like low blood pressure and the coronary heart disease or carotid artery disease like arteriosclerosis or arteriosclerosis or thrombosis. This is the different type of complication will lead to tinnitus, even the hearing loss also. But this is the unnaturally, it is accidentally, but the naturally means the cochlear nerve absence of cochlear nerves, and other problem in the brain, or auditory cortex absent or auditory cortex problem. So let's begin to understand the summarization. So when sound in the external ear will receive the tympanic membrane and middle ear, if the tympanic membrane problem will lead to cause deafness, inner ear problem, if it means the problem can cause the deafness also, and cochlear nerve absent will lead to cause deafness also if the cochlear nuclei will a problem in the medulla and can cause the problem. And further on the olivary nuclei, and olivary nuclei will absent or genetically or problem will lead to cause the deafness, inferior calculus and midbrain, and the medial geniculate body will lead to primary auditory cortex Siluven fissure. And in this way, remember, this is the sound pathway. It is the primary to the secondary problem will lead to cause the deafness. So ear physiology we have covered in this video, as we have discussed about their complication, their disease on the basis of the situation. It can be a brain problem or ear problem. It can be cochlear nerve